Alright, so I just got my line output converter here. I got it off Walmart, and so I'm looking for a way to tap into the speakers. Now for me, the easiest way I can see is tapping in through the connections that go into this Harman Kardon amplifier, this guy right here. This is located right inside here. In order to get it out, first you have to remove this kind of carpet panel thing here. In order to get this carpet panel off of here, so that you can have enough access to shove your hand in there and get the bolts off which hold this amplifier in. You can see two spots right here. First you have to there's these two push pins here. There's one right here. There's another one, I think. Where's another one? I'm pretty sure there were two of these. There's one here. And oh, there's one right here where my finger is. So there's two. These push pins, you have to take them out, and then you'll be able to try to kind of partially remove this thing. Also, you have to kind of partially remove this or loosen this panel up here too, and this has also got some push pins on the inside here. I think there's two, maybe three. I'm not, where did it go? Was there? Maybe not. Oh no, you know what? This didn't have the push pins. It has these clips here. There's like a bunch of clips, but I think I just took off maybe 3 clips. One, there's 2, and I think a third one here somewhere. Once you loosen this up, then you can pop this carpet panel right from underneath it, because it's holding it in. Yeah, so once you do that, you can pop this out and then partially remove this here. Also, there's a cigarette lighter here which I just kind of removed. There's a light bulb here which I kind of removed, and they're just sitting on the side. Once you do that, how are you? Once you do that, yeah, then you have more or less kind of free access to the amplifier. Now the amplifier is bolted in 3 places. You can see here, this is one place. I think it's a 10mm bolt that you have to remove. There's a second one here, and the third one is a really difficult pain in the ass place, is right here. It's really hard to get in here with a ratcheting socket and try to remove it. So you have to just play around with it. Overall spacing is very tight, so take your time. Yeah, so once you have these 3 bolts removed, then you have the harness, which is where is the harness? If I can find it. Where's the harness? Oh, there we go. So this is the master harness, and you insert those 2 harnesses are inserted here. Now for the easiest way of tapping into the wires, you need to you definitely want to remove it out of this master harness, because there's just no way you're gonna be able to tap into those as long as it's inside this master harness. The easiest way to take these 2, and also don't forget the orientation of the black and the gray sub harnesses. So the way these guys go in is the way actually they come out is, if you look at the back here, he can insert a flathead screwdriver here, and you really have to hold it against something, because it's they're in there pretty tough. You have to just insert a flathead screwdriver in here, and you know, give it enough force, and these two sub harnesses will pop out. Now, I should have mentioned this, but in order to remove this sub harness from the amplifier, this clip, this thing here, it has to be down. When it's down, you can remove it. When you hear that click, that's when it's fully down and it frees up the harness from the amplifier. But first, you have to kind of feel for it, because you won't be able to see it. This tab, you have to push it down, because this impedes this clip from coming down. So once you push this down while moving this clip away downwards, this will come out. This will go down, frees up the way for this clip to come down. Once you do that, then you do the removal process of these two sub harnesses. And yeah, so after do that, you get to a point where you have to figure out which wires are for the speakers, and that's where I'm stuck at right now. I thought I had the right speakers hooked up, because I did a test with a 9-volt battery, and I got some sound coming out of my rear speakers. But what I didn't know was the rear speakers, they have tweeters in them, and the tweeters were making the sound. I'm not getting sound off of any well, my neighbor's potted plants just fell, so I'm not getting any noise coming out of the other speakers with the 9-volt battery. So now I thought that I looked online for the correct wiring diagrams for this specific amplifier here. This is the model number right here, HS9598. I found 1 or 2 wiring diagrams, but the color of the wires didn't match up with what was on those wiring diagrams. So what what I had to do is basically test out each of the wiring connections and try to figure out which wire is for which speaker. But with the 9-volt, the only thing that makes noise is the tweeters. So now I'm just trying to figure out a way how to make the speakers make a sound, so I can identify which is the left, which is the right, which is front, and which is back. But I only need the left and right connection. I don't care about front and back. So yeah, that's once I figure that out, I'll just put it in the video. So I ran into an issue when I tapped into the incoming wires from the radio. What I didn't realize at the time is that the radio signals, the sound signals coming from the head unit, they're not amplified. The Harman Kardon amplifier actually amplifies those sounds. So when I put a line output converter on it, it probably wasn't going to work very well, because line output converters are meant to basically de-amplify the signal, or kind of step down the voltage on the audio signal they're getting. But the head unit audio signal was already pretty low, so the LOC wasn't really going to work. But then I never really got to test it out because it broke on me. The little gain knobs on it broke. But my amplifier actually has high and low voltage signal input on it, the JL 500/1. So what I did was I just hooked up the RCA cables directly to the incoming signal wires from the head unit of the Mini Cooper, and that's working just fine for me. So in case you try to tap signals, try to tap into some signal wires, you should just remember that if it's coming from the radio, it's going to be very low voltage wise, and you may need another kind of line output converter which can also amplify signal versus just lowering the voltage down. Alright, so I was just testing to see how I can find the signal. Basically what I did is I have my phone hooked up front there somewhere, and my phone is running a sound generator. Now while the sound generator is running, it's obviously hooked up through auxiliary to the Mini Cooper radio, and I basically went kind of connection point by connection point looking for a constant voltage, and what I found was that these two blue wires, they're blue, and I think one is blue with brown stripe and blue with gray stripe, something like that. These two were giving me a constant voltage. When I turned the sound generator off, no voltage was coming. When I turned it on, the voltage was coming, about 1.16 volts. Also on this other loom, I found that there was voltage coming on I believe this side here, a gray and a blue wire. Yeah, so the voltage was coming off of two wires on this black one and two wires on this gray one. So this is one way you can check for your radio input signal, is just have a voltmeter, set it to AC voltage, and then just kind of start from the back side here and start testing for a constant voltage while having a sound generator on your cell phone putting out a constant basically sound, so that you can check for voltage. So next thing, I'm going to test this a little bit more, put some music on to make sure that the voltage is going up and down, it's nothing funny going on here. And when I confirm that, then I'll splice into these two wires here. As you can see, I already spliced into these 4 other wires, but then I found out they were the tweeters for the rear of the car. So now I have to kind of cut these and cut these off and put some more electrical tape on here to make sure they're secure, and then use these wires again to tap into these two what do you call it, these two other signal wires that are coming from the head unit of the Mini Cooper, and they use those for the line output converter. Hopefully nothing hopefully that's right and nothing gets screwy again. Alright, so this is some of my soldering work. I stripped the wires off, and I soldered these 2 extra wires, so I have more room to work with, more placement choices for the line output converter here. Not my best work, but I'm working with that big soldering gun over there, so it's pretty hard to get it in here and then position it and get these wires to stay still. It's a real pain in the butt, but you know, it's decent enough. These will hold no problem. They're just not that pretty. So yeah, you gotta be really careful when you're soldering inside here. Yeah, so I'm just gonna, I already did some here and tape them up. So I'm gonna, yeah, tape these up too, and I guess do a little dry run with the line output converter, make sure it works properly. Alright, I'm just doing some testing with the wires to make sure they're connected properly and there was no problem with the solders. So I don't know if it's visible or not, but once I put these on, I get about 1.164 AC voltage on this. So that one's good. And then let's see, this one here, 0.16, close enough. So yeah, they're good, they're functional. Gonna start doing a dry run on the lock, and if everything's going good, I'm gonna start soldering this stuff. Now I don't know how big a deal it is, but also if you want to know what's your left channel and right channel, there's an app. There's also like a couple of YouTube videos that do a left and right channel test for you. And then I just did this, and this one's my left, this one's my right. Yeah, so just in case, I don't know how important it is, but I thought I should just figure it out, because this is asking for this line output converter is telling me which one's left and right, so I'm just gonna, you know, do it right. Alright, so I'm pretty much done with my wiring. I got my 2 signal wires going into the line output converter here, and I also found a amp signal wire which tells the amplifier to turn on. It was on the loom here. I made sure that it is that it turns on and off when the vehicle's on and off, and yeah, I just tested it with the voltmeter. I let it sit for about 5 minutes or something, and I locked the doors, and then the power went off on that wire. So I'm going to use that as a amp signal cable, which is this one right here. First I was going to put it through the lock, because you can pull power, and you can pull power through here and use this blue wire here as a amp signal wire. When the lock detects audio signal, it sends a signal to the amp to turn on. But then since that wire turns on and off with the vehicle, I decided to go straight to the amplifier here instead of wiring it to the lock, because then I have to find a ground for it too, and I'm like, forget it, that's too much work. I'll just run a simple small gauge wire to the amplifier. So yeah, I'm just gonna put the start putting everything back together and see how it goes. This is how you just put it in the sub harnesses into the main harness. You just on my model, the gray sub harness goes on the left, the black on the right. But just make sure that if you're doing this, you take a picture of it to make sure yours is the same way. So yeah, you just put it in the hole and you push it in all the way into the sub harness, making sure all these holes are lining up. There's the gray. Here's the black one. Also, this raised portion of the sub harness, it's towards the back, and the lower part of the sub harness goes to the front, or goes in first into the main harness. Now this is a real pain in the butt to get it in one-handed, because this harness is just I didn't find any way to kind of pull it a little bit out, so it's very difficult to work in here. Something to keep in mind. Alright, this is just a little test to make sure everything works. So I've got the amp plugged in and everything, and as you can see, or maybe not, the amplifier and the subwoofer are working, as well as all the speakers, so I didn't screw up anything yet. All of the speakers inside are working, so I'm just gonna clean up and wrap it up, and I just have to do adjustments after that to make sure this is it's hitting within its power limits. Probably not that much, maybe within 60-70% of its power limit. I don't want it too loud. Alright, so everything's back together now. Put this carpet back on. I had to take this whole plastic piece off because there was no way I would be able to bend this.
And it's not finished. I don't know if
it wouldn't it was over this, but I couldn't bend it enough. I was afraid it was gonna break, so I took this whole plastic piece off. There's some clips at the bottom. I believe there's about 4 clips at the bottom. You got to take those out in order to take this out, and then you just slide this out because it's kind of hooked on the locking mechanism. Once you put the carpet back on, slide this back in. Also, it has the 4 clips up here that secure it, and 4 push pins at the bottom that secure it. Tap on them, and yeah, they'll go back in, and then the push pins are pretty easy to put back in. And then I put this carpet in. This is all done. This is kind of what it looks like with the power wire coming through this little panel here. It's just holding on, doesn't seem bad. I don't think it's gonna come off. On this side, there's where the amplifier and the line output converter is. It closed in because there was obviously nothing to get in the way. Also, the RCA cables, I also ran them under this plastic panel. As you can see here, they come out right about here, in this area here. Yeah, it wasn't long enough to come all the way out here and then go like that, so I had to make it come out here. But yeah, it's basically coming in all the way from under the carpet, this carpet panel here, all the way under there, all the way under this plastic panel. It runs all the way here, comes out of here, goes into the amplifier. As you can see, my power is on, so the signal wire is working properly. Yeah, I'm just gonna start adjusting the outputs and all that stuff, and a low pass filter on the on this guy, and if there's any need for what do you call it, and if there's any need for me to adjust the line output converter, you know, maybe make the signal stronger or weaker or something, I'm gonna do that too. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This 10-inch fits more or less pretty well in here. And actually, I don't know if it's 10 or 12. I'm pretty sure it's 10. I gotta get my tape measure. But yeah, it fits pretty decent in a enclosed, sealed enclosure here. Yeah, and the rest of this stuff's just gonna be fine-tuning to make sure, you know, the output's acceptable. Yeah, so the line output converter also has like a remote. I didn't put it on. Maybe I will, maybe not, I'm not sure. I think if I get everything done, like the settings made pretty well, I'm not even gonna bother with this. If anything, I will put a remote on my amplifier versus the line output converter. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much more or less what's involved in putting a amplifier in a subwoofer and your Mini Cooper R56 2010.